You won't be surprised to know that Sly News also felt they had to show the other side.
But refugees are welcome in Altrincham, according to banners outside the church. Protesters here feel some of the messaging about migrants is racist.
A lot of the posts on social media have been racist. I think when you're saying that refugee and asylum-seeking men should be vetted to make sure that they're not paedophiles, I think that's racist.
Absolutely delighted to be joined by Alex Wilson of Reform UK and the top Conservative commentator Charlie Downes. And Alex actually is another man who has been brilliantly questioning authority, questioning the narrative, and I'm going to explain why he caused a social media sensation by being the only politician to fight the migrant crisis in just one moment. But first, breaking right now, growing fury over the asylum seekers hotel in Altringham, which finally the mainstream media have decided is a story. Watch this report from Sly News.
300 guys from a country which we know did not value women.
We don't know anything about them. We have no idea what they are capable of doing.
What happens when a hotel in a market town becomes a hostel for migrants? In Altrincham near Manchester, residents have just discovered that hotel bookings, meetings and even wedding receptions have been cancelled. And without warning to locals, 300 male asylum seekers have started to move in. So they've called a meeting in a nearby church with the local community police officer.
300 guys from a country which we know did not value women.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that's the hard... No, I'm sorry. Is there going to be a curfew? Or are they just at 7 o'clock at night, just going to be able to wander around? Is my daughter going to be safe when she goes into Altrincham and has a few drinks? No, is the answer.
We can't lock people up who haven't committed any crimes. We cannot impose on them and restrict their movement if they haven't committed any crimes.
I just find it frankly unbelievable. There's a lollipop man on the doorstep because that's how close the primary is. There are 2 all-girls schools within 10-minute walk. They have to go past an at-risk area.
I can assure you we've had asylum seekers in Trafford for several years and there has been no spike in crime.
Are they really seriously on another planet?
There are concerns too about adding pressures on local GP services.
And then come in the country and get what I want, to see a doctor.
Now, of course, this is the sort of coverage that should have been going on in the mainstream media for a long time. You won't be surprised to know that Sly News also felt they had to show the other side.
But refugees are welcome in Altrincham, according to banners outside the church. Protesters here feel some of the messaging about migrants is racist.
A lot of the posts on social media have been racist. I think when you're saying that refugee and asylum-seeking men should be vetted to make sure that they're not paedophiles, I think that's racist.
Racist, of course it is. My superstar panel with me, Reform UK's Alex Wilson and the Conservative commentator Charlie Downes. So, Charlie, look, finally, the mainstream media realising that these communities are being torn apart. But what's going on in Altrincham is a genuine scandal. I've been hearing from lots of locals who say that outside the hotel now, there are multiple Asian, African men. This is the words of one of our viewers saying that they just sit on the wall outside, staring at cars go by. They've also heard from people who live in the area and are saying they're incredibly worried about the safety, given that there's a grammar school and a primary school just across the road.
You know, the one thing that really stuck with me about this story is actually the fact that the hotel that's being used to house these migrants had to cancel previous reservations that had been made there, including weddings. Now, the reason that this stuck with me is because I'm currently in the process of planning my own wedding, right? I'm getting married next year because I'm a very lucky man.
But congratulations, I didn't know that.
Thank you very much. But the idea of going through all of that, you know, all of the complication, all of the complexity, all of the expense in planning a wedding, and I'll tell you, it's an expensive and complicated thing to do in this day and age, going through all of that just to have it cancelled so that the venue that you were going to use, presumably for your reception, can be used to house men, primarily, who've come across the channel illegally and are therefore criminals, so that they can be put up in a nice comfy bed in a nice warm room, so that they can be fed nice cooked food at the taxpayer's expense. It blows my mind. It blows my mind that our government is prepared to treat the native population of Britain in this way, in the name of essentially, well, on the one hand, it's the being kind thing, it's the stand up to racism people that we just heard from that clip, but it's also the fact that our immigration system and our entire Home Office, quite frankly, is completely broken. I mean, the fact that we have this illegal immigration problem that has, you know, everyone's talking about it, it's one of the most pressing issues of our time, but it speaks to the fact that our government has completely lost the grip of how to actually deal with this problem. And it's unsurprising that these residents, ordinary people, like you listen to these people, you listen to the way they're speaking, you look at how they look, these are not radicals, these are not far-right extremists, these are mums and dads, these are grandparents, right? These are aunties and uncles who are scared for the safety of their children and grandchildren in their local area. You know, there was a time, I had a conversation with David Starkey recently, and he told me about the kind of the vibe of Britain when he was growing up, and he used the word gentle, and that was really interesting because I hadn't heard it described in that way before. He said Britain used to be a really gentle place, and that vibe has completely disappeared, in my opinion. I mean, there are pockets where that sense remains, and these are typically pockets that haven't been hit so hard by the effects of mass legal and illegal migration. But that, you know, you look at this situation where there are these fighting age men staring at girls, just sitting there, taking up space, wasting taxpayer money at the expense of probably, well, you know, like I say, young people who want to get married and business meetings and all this sort of thing. And you just have to wonder, like, what the heck is going on in this country?
And also, let's just be honest about it, not always just staring at girls. There are countless examples of sexual assaults and rapes by illegal migrants. That is a fact. And you're completely right to talk about the impact, by the way, of people's lives. I mean, there's some really good local reporting on this going on X. And the first locals heard of the decision was when a news page posted that bookings for the forthcoming year were cancelled without warning, including weddings. And Alex Wilson, I'm going to give Reform UK a lot of credit here because it does feel like you're the only party who's actually saying this is morally corrupt.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. And thank you very much for having me back on the show. Agree entirely with everything that Charlie has just said. I'd like to congratulate the local residents who made sure that meeting was held, so they were given an opportunity to at least raise their questions, because up until now, nobody's been asked about this. We've seen a huge transformation happening in towns and cities right across our country without any consent from the existing population. And the number of crossings is out of control. We've already had, up until the beginning of this month, and still 2 months to go in the rest of the year, still had a greater number of crossings over the channel than in the entirety of last year so far. 150,000 roughly, since 2018, and it's inevitable that it has an impact on local services, on the hotels, on B&Bs and all these things, and people are rightly concerned, and they're right to be raising those concerns. Well done for them for holding that meeting and holding the local police to account and raising those questions.
And I want to show a little bit more from the meeting, actually. Watch this, and Charlie, I'll get you to react off the back.
And there's things like the input to hospitals, doctors, dentists, the facilities we have. We're already fairly stretched, I feel, in the area. Is that going to be something?
So my understanding is they're contracted with GoDoc, which I think is the sort of nighttime service. It's a private doctor's system. Am I understanding that? It's not a statement. But that should mean they won't be putting weight on our local
the local surgeries or the local doctors.
We're all 3 years waiting
That is not that. Again, well, let's find out. I think it's important. Is it a burden on us? Is the council paying for that? I know the council are getting some funding to support this. I know it's inadequate.
But first, winter is coming, and so is cold and flu season. Don't I know it? Viruses thrive in cold, dry air, and our immune responses weaken in colder temperatures. Now, I used to get sick often during these months, but I've avoided the flu all year, and I'm recovering much faster from when I get a little cold, like the past week. You've heard me talk about Verso before. I've been taking it for months now, and their products have greatly improved my immunity, especially Clean Being. It's made with research-backed ingredients that boost your body's defense systems to fight off viruses when you get introduced to them, preventing you from getting sick in the first place. A strong immune response isn't just about fighting off illness, but also managing your body's reaction afterward. Inflammation helps protect against viruses, but too much can cause pain, tissue damage, and slow recovery. Clean Being manages inflammation, keeping your body balanced so it fights sickness effectively without extra problems. This reduces pain and swelling, protects tissues, and prevents overreactions. Now, after taking Clean Being for some time, I don't get sick as often, I recover quicker, have an improved mental state, and more energy. So if you click on the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken when you check out, you will save 15% on your first order. I'm just going to repeat that address for you: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken. I mean, Charlie Downs, what do you say to that?
I think that what we need to talk about here is the revealed preference of the regime beneath which we live. Now, first of all, to be clear, this problem of illegal migration obviously didn't begin with the Labour government. It began, as Alex, I'm sure, will highlight, with the Conservative Party of the last 14 years. But let's look at what the Labour government, since July, has prioritised. Let's look at the constituencies that they have favoured, and let's look at the constituencies that they have completely thrown out into the cold. So to begin with, it was the pensioners. They cut the winter fuel allowance. Then there was the attack on pubs. And now we have this situation where the well-being of Indigenous Britons is being completely, the well-being of criminal illegal migrants is being prioritised over the well-being of Indigenous Britons. This is the behaviour of an occupied country, right? A country that is occupied by a foreign power. That's the only way that you can logically explain the kinds of policies that we're seeing implemented right now. Is clearly, Keir Starmer and co signal to working people, although they very much struggle to define what that even means. When actually it's clear that the constituency that they represent and the people that they are governing on behalf of is not the British. I don't know who it is, but it certainly isn't the British. It seems to be, in fact, against the British and not really in favour of any one other particular group. It seems to be a government of genuine hatred for this country and the people of it. That's the only way that I can really explain this, because you look at this particular part of this story, where these illegal migrants who are already occupying taxpayer-funded accommodation are being given private healthcare. Now, that's something that a lot of people in this country could only dream of having, right? Because the NHS is not fit for purpose. The quality of care that it gives has deteriorated over the years, and the wait times are absolutely insane. And so, many people wish they had access to private healthcare, but they don't, because it's expensive. And yet we see these people, and we don't know where they're from, we don't know what their intentions are. Generally speaking, there's only one reason that somebody would come here illegally, and that's so that their name isn't on the books. And you can fill in the blanks as to why they might not want their name to be on record as being into the country.
Of course. I mean, look, the authorities have been turning a blind eye to an illegal invasion of our country now for years. And the problem is, no one is going to politically represent the poor folk in Altrincham. I mean, this incredible thread, by the way, gave me a little bit of information about the local MP, Conor Rand. First time Altrincham has ever voted Labour to represent them in Parliament. I think it will be the last. This guy, you can imagine, trade union researcher, primary school teacher, no connection to the local community, and he's not going to represent them. That is the reality here. But Alex Wilson, I want to talk about your representation of the people of London, because you have gone viral all across the globe because of a speech that you gave, finally standing up against illegal migrants being given the sorts of privileges that, as Charlie says, that most Brits can only dream of. This is what you posted on X. London Labour passed a motion to give illegal immigrants free travel around London. The weak, wet Tories refused to vote against this. I'm currently the sole reform voice in the London Assembly. If this absurdity persists, I won't be the only one after the next election. And you're completely right on that. And I want to look at the speech that you gave, actually. At the start, you apologised. I don't think you should have apologised, actually, but I completely understand the point that you were making. Have a look at this.
Break the cosy consensus, but that's what I've been elected to do, so that's what I'm going to do. And the Prime Minister now recognises people smuggling as a national security threat. And for all the talk of smashing the gangs, we're not going to get a grip on this issue until the pull factors are addressed. It was already out of control under the last government. It's getting even worse now. More than 31,000 crossing the Channel by the 2nd of November, more than the whole of last year, and there's still 2 months to go. We are, and always have been, a welcoming country to those in genuine need. But the vast majority of those crossing are not women and children fleeing war and persecution. 3/4 are males of fighting age. And British taxpayers will reach a limit when they feel they're being taken advantage of. We saw on Tuesday in America what happens when people have had enough of their generosity being taken for granted. I know I'm alone at present in this chamber, but I'm sure if we carry on like this, in 4 years' time, I won't be.
Well, you know what, Alex? I am giving you a round of applause for that. It's gone around the world. It has gone around the world because it does show the insanity of our political class. What is the Conservative representatives thinking? What are they thinking?
Honestly, don't know what they're there for, the Conservatives, sometimes. I mean, there's some good people in that group, but by and large, they are a very wet and woke Conservative group. I completely understand why the Greens and the Lib Dems would back Labour on this. It's something that they're obsessed with. But for the Conservatives to abstain, to sit on their hands, to not even want to engage in the discussion, I think was incredibly surprising. And that's why this story has, as you say, gone around the world. I've been contacted now by huge numbers of people who've seen the clip on Twitter, who've read about it online, and are saying, well done, you're the only one that's standing up for us. And it shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't need to feel like I'm on my own on that assembly. But I do, and I am. And for as long as that's the case, I will continue fighting. I will continue saying these things. But when the next election comes around in 3.5 years' time, the more nonsense like this happens in the meantime, the more likely it is we'll have a very strong reform group on the assembly. Who knows, maybe even a reform mayor. And that way we can start to turn things around.
Because the thing is, Charlie, we need revolution now. Incremental change ain't gonna work. You know, I'm also engaged in the political system. We have to be. We live in a democracy. But I watched PMQs today, and I've been prepared to give Kemi Badenoch a chance, even though I wasn't supportive of her winning the Conservative Party leadership. She was so weak. Today, she was so weak. I don't have the faith that this is the woman who's going to provide a revolution. Then I look at Donald Trump's announcements over the last 24 hours. You know, Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to shake up government efficiency, Mike Huckabee to be the ambassador to Israel. And I just think this is what leadership looks like. This is what we need in this country.
Yeah, Alex, it's great work you're doing there. I actually really feel for you because earlier this year I was involved in a Mayor of London, independent Mayor of London campaign, and therefore had the unfortunate pleasure of dealing with certain members of staff at City Hall. You know, they're institutionally liberal and progressive, so I think that you are very much in enemy territory. So I applaud you for the work you're doing. But Dan, you're right. I mean, revolution is very much a loaded word, but I think it's the only way we can describe what we need in Britain at this point, because we're a country that has quite a proud history of incremental change and of you know, kind of not finding ourselves in a situation where the only recourse is, you know, essentially overthrowing the power structure. And I still believe that there are political solutions to the problems that we have. I believe Reform UK are a fantastic asset in that regard. And I agree that the Conservative Party, in not choosing to elect Robert Jenrick, have chosen to learn all the wrong lessons from their crushing defeat at the general election. They took the lesson from the general election that, oh, okay, what people want is for us to be more progressive and more liberal and more wet. Because that really is the faction of the party that Kemi Badenoch represents. And so, we find a situation where there is this enormous gap in the market for a genuine alternative in the mainstream political discourse. And again, I think Reform UK are doing fantastic work on that front. But there's still a long way to go till the next election, and I think there's a lot of political and rhetorical space that's being left on the table that Reform should be taking. So, and I'm aware that Reform are rolling out their national structure and they're taking it one step at a time, which I respect. But at the same time, time is short, and we live in a situation where people are crying out. Ordinary people, like the people that we saw in the footage out of Altrincham, ordinary people are crying out for representation. They're crying out for leadership, right? And until they have that, I think that people are going to get more and more angry, more and more disaffected. And it's at that point that you start seeing things like what happened over the summer. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, and I'm not in any way encouraging that kind of behavior. But as the left always like to tell us, as they told us all throughout 2020, when American cities were burning, riots are the voice of the unheard. And that is true. And so I think that until a true political vehicle emerges for these people, and as I say, I think Reform could very much be that, I think that, we're in a pretty dire place.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.